God, please just destroy this disgusting ball of lies, deceit, and disappointment we call a planet already. As we are now seeing the return of Dungeon Siege as an NFT Metaverse game. Why? In case any of you are deeply confused, and I wouldn't be surprised, Dungeon Siege is a very old series. I mean, theoretically, technically it is a series. A series made up of one game as far as I'm concerned, but that aside, Dungeon Siege is a game that was released in 2001, 2002, something along those lines, and for the time, it was a revolutionary title in quite a few ways, in user interface, in storytelling, and in graphics. It was beautiful for the time. Like, magical gear actually looked magical. Like, you would glow, your swords would have all kinds of magical effect, magical sticks would have all kinds of blinky lights and twinky twirlies, and it sounds retarded today, but back then it was very, very impressive to have something like a, flaming sword or something. That was unheard of. This was back in the day when we'd pretty much just accepted that, yep, RTS games and RPG games would always be really, really hideous. And would look like nothing more than a bunch of barely animated pixels rubbing violently up against one another. It also introduced the concept of characters only drinking as much from a health potion as they needed, rather than simply gulping the entire bottle due to a scratched wrist. Again, it sounds retarded, but this was back in the day when ideas like attack move and bandboxing were still considered pretty revolutionary. So yeah. And furthermore, the first Dungeon Siege, it was, to use modern day games journalist lingo, it was Dark Souls before Dark Souls was the Dark Soul of Dark Souls. You were sent into this world and you had no real idea what was going on. Your village was being invaded, there were monsters and enormous insects and stuff, and you were like, oh god, what's even happening here? And you hear tales of monsters and wild beasts and catastrophe and conflict, and you have to venture out into this wide world and figure out what the hell is going on. And you get little clues, little pieces of the puzzle as you travel through this ruined, dilapidated world on the brink of annihilation, as you go through one little desperate clinging on society of humans to the next. When you see a town with walls, you're overjoyed, like holy hell, there's actually a solid society here, and even that is on the brink of annihilation due to an ancient darkness rising in the capital, which is itself a blow because you were thinking you were heading to the capital to get help. It was a really cool story, and it told the story so well through the environment, through the monsters, through the areas you visited. It was, for lack of a better word, incredibly immersive. And now, it's an NFT game in the Metaverse. Kill me now, please, hurry. This is the final desecration of gas-powered games legacy. That's what this is. Gas-powered games, you probably don't know about those either, but they were a brilliant little studio that, well, killed itself with its ambition, basically. They kept trying to do incredible things. Dungeon Siege was one of these things, then Dungeon Siege 2 came out, and that was okay, then Space Siege came out, and that never existed, and then Dungeon Siege 3 came out, and I'm gonna stop there. They also made Supreme Commander, which was amazing, of course, and Demigod, which was a very, for its time, it was a really interesting game. It was the first like proper commercialized MOBA, which was very interesting, and nobody quite understood what the hell this was, and it really failed to be popular at all, but hey, it was a very cool attempt, if nothing else. Then of course came Supreme Commander 2, and then the studio tanked itself with its own ambitions, basically, but it was apparently bought up by Square Enix, who is now doing this garbage to it. What exactly is this? Well, I don't even think the people who are making it knows. It's got the hashtags The Sandbox, NFT and Metaverse attached to it. From what I can piece together from the various sources here, it's supposed to be some kind of modular system, that's the sandbox, where you can create your own RPG adventures, because apparently this was always the purpose of Dungeon Siege. A memo I never received, but details at this point. Dungeon Siege has already been graped into non-existence, so why the hell not? And this will then be available within the metaverse with an NFT slant, and I can see what they're going for there. I absolutely can, because think of it like this, right? If a picture of a monkey, the unique code associated with that picture of a monkey, can be worth thousands of dollars, then think about, for example, a custom-made RPG adventure made by some big-name creator like, those fake-ass, Critical Role, that was it. Yes, those people. Imagine that they made an RPG adventure, or they simply released the RPG adventure in game form as an NFT. Yeah, you can see my point quite quickly, can't you? It would be worth quite a lot, especially if they were like first editions, second editions, maybe re-releases of classics, stuff like that, or maybe even uniqueness, like there's only 100 copies of this adventure, and this is number 1, 2, 3, etc, etc. I can actually absolutely see that having a great deal of NFT value as, non-fungible tokens, unique piece of code, blah blah blah, and they could also then potentially be used in this aforementioned sandbox thing. On the other hand, I also see this being an absolutely cancerous piece of offal that could be abused in every way imaginable. Not only is it a way to very predatorily monetize things already, predatory monetization. That should be the middle name of NFTs at this point. It's like, it genuinely is ridiculous, but we're not going to get into the NFT thing here because it's too much of a dumbass thing. Anywho, the point is, I can see what they're trying at, but I'm really hating where it's going. The idea of the metaverse, right? The ridiculous idea that Mark Zuckerberg had boiling up in his brain, which, by the way, is apparently infeasible on the current day internet, which is brilliant, with the VP of Meta asking for countries and companies to help build the kind of internet infrastructure required to actually run Zuckerberg's harebrained scheme, English, difficult language. Well, there you go, I suppose. But the idea of a VR Chat 2.0 meets Tabletop Simulator 2.0 on Facebook's enormous platforms with Facebook's enormous reach and enormous resources, I can absolutely see the appeal of it. A virtual world, a chat room, but on a global scale, essentially, that you could connect to from anywhere with the advantages and advances of VR technology, headsets and controllers, etc. The problem is, if it's going to all turn into a bunch of NFTs, closed off little gated communities, the abuses of old IPs like this and so on, what you're going to have is, imagine the internet almost like just a series of closed off rooms as shops. Like, you've got to have a token to enter into here. Your token gives you access to this. Your token is bound to this particular product, this particular program, etc, etc. We would be looking at a hyper commercialized and hyper restricted version of the internet under the thumb of Facebook. Yeah, I'm starting to see a few flashing warning lights on the horizon, honestly. And of course, the best way for a company to get into this and start abusing it will be to take a property that is recognizable enough to draw some attention, a la, I don't know, Dungeon Siege, but not so popular as to endanger any of their real franchises if it turned out to be an absolute tremendous flop. Yeah. the future is not looking particularly bright for one of my favorite games of all times. In fact, it looks like its corpse has been dragged out of the grave, had a lasso tied around its legs, and is currently being dragged full gallop behind a blood-maddened, cocaine-fueled racehorse. Fuck me. Until next time, I've been Arch. I'm gonna go sob in a corner now. Have a good day.